All right, we will start here in a moment with Alex Compton joining us in a couple minutes. Thank you for joining our live stream of the big news. If you haven't heard, IU has announced that Tom Allen will not be returning as head coach in 2024. We'll discuss it. We'll go over what it means for the program, a little look back at the Tom Allen era, and go over what's next for IU. So hold tight. Again, this is our first live stream, so give us a minute, and we'll get going.
All right.
All right, let's see if this if this works.
Yeah, let me look. I'll tweet it out here.
Yeah, it's super delayed.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
bet.
we're live right now. That we've got like three people in the. Um, yep, you're up there too. So, all right, we ready?
Yeah.
All right. Good morning and welcome to an emergency podcast of the Hoosier Huddle podcast. It was announced earlier today. Sources confirmed with us that Tom Allen will not return as the head coach of the Indiana football team in 2024. It's something that has been speculated about for weeks. Some may even say years. But after yesterday's 35-31 loss to Purdue in the old Oaken Bucket game, Indiana announces that Tom Allen will not return. I'm Sammy Jacobs. Along with me is Alex Compton. This is our first live podcast, so what a time. Bear with us if there are any technical issues. If not, it will be also, um, recorded and put up on our podcast page. Alex, what are your initial reactions from
Yeah.
from this?
Felt like it was coming. Sad day. It really is a sad day. When you look at kind of who Tom was and what he meant to a lot of people, there's a lot of former players and stuff, coming out, showing their support. awesome man when I was a student at IU and did a lot of work for the athletic department and the student sections and stuff. Um, Tom always felt comfortable giving me a few minutes. He never big time me. I don't think he ever big timed anyone. Um, yeah, I think it sucks. You felt really good in 2020. You felt like you had real momentum. You were stacking good seasons and good classes, and you got the extension. And we're like, all right, that this is what programs do. You reward guys that do well and guys that win games. Then you got an extension and you won three Big Ten games in your next three seasons. You went 3-24 in league play. And I get it. You want good guys and you want to develop good guys on and off the field, all that stuff. I think all of that stuff is still true. And I think all of that stuff is what they'll say for the press conference for the next guy. But his job is to win football games. And unfortunately, you can blame a million different factors. You can blame assistants, you can blame players, you can blame budgets, whatever. Tom's job is to win football games, and he didn't do enough of that the last three seasons.
Yeah, it's something where IU is facing a buyout. In this, details have not come out on the buyout if it was negotiated down or stuff like this, but it was time to move on, and it is a sad day because everybody thought that Tom Allen was going to be that guy, the next Bill Mallory, to be here to win games, to kind of turn the program around, and he did for a while. And then it just came to a shocking crashing halt after the 2021 season, or even to start the 2021 season. And, he just couldn't recapture that magic. And, there are people who are celebrating and happy and all that stuff. And I just think that's the wrong way to go about it in terms of, bashing a coach on his way out. You'll look back in 10 or 15 years and say that, hey, Tom Allen did some really good stuff. He brought stability to the program. He's here for 7 years. He gave that program a little bit of an identity. They lost that identity and never could regain it. But, you know, he made people care about Indiana football. And yeah, by the end of his tenure, it started going sour and you had to move on. But looking back, it's what happened. You got to diagnose what happened, why it happened so quickly, and how do you fix it. So, with that question, Alex, going forward, what does IU need to do?
I think we talk about it at length. I think first of all, again, you don't want people to lose your job, and I'll finally show it. I think I've mentioned it on a couple different podcasts, but I have this picture of Tom. I think this was his first I think his first full time season as head coach. I was a student, but worked for the athletic department, so he would run by the student section every game. So somebody had them or him sign this for me, and frame that when I graduated. So I'll leave it up, but that's a good memory, a good thing I have. So mixed emotions today, but what I will say, I think you've paid now the third largest buyout in the history of college football to make this move. So that in itself shows you're more serious than I probably thought you were going to be. We had heard rumblings of this happening a couple weeks ago, or the decision being made a couple weeks ago. But in my mind, I was like, there's still no way we're going to come up with $20 million plus probably to make this move and the assistants and all that stuff. So, I guess in that aspect itself, that shows a little bit of signs of some seriousness. We'll see now. Now you have to get it right. And most athletic directors don't get to make three football hires. So, we'll see what happens here. I know he kind of inherited Tom, but we'll see. I have no idea. But for me, I think we'll talk about our hot board that we've published on HoosierHuddle.com right now. So if you want to check that out while you're listening or following along on Twitter, those are candidates we feel pretty comfortable with including on there, both from like a realistic standpoint and maybe some stuff kind of floating around. But I think hiring somebody that has been a head coach for like before is a must for me. I get there are attractive coordinators, and seems like Mississippi State are going to hire Oklahoma's offensive coordinator. Oregon's having a ton of success with Georgia's former defensive coordinator, stuff like that. But you got to have a guy that's run a program before and has done it well. Indiana's not really a place, I don't think, to try to learn how to be a head coach. There are a lot of challenges stacked up against you, as we've covered at length before. So I do think you need a guy that has been a head coach before. I think it's critical. I think, especially in today's age and era of the portal and NIL, you're already seeing current IU players talking about, should I stay or should I go? You need a guy that's been a head coach before. There's just too much stuff for Indiana football that goes on that I think you need a guy that's been a head coach before. So I'll stop there. I think for me, that's probably my 1A, and my 1B is somebody that knows how to run good offense. Don't want a defensive guy. Love Kane Womack. Do not want Kane Womack. I want an offensive first prior head coach, preferably that has won or been at a big school.
Yeah, you look at our hot board, and there's some of those names on there, and they're in different categories, and it's hard to depict to know what IU's budget is and all that stuff. But for me, it's the head coach, and I think Dylan Powell said this on Twitter today as well. It does not all fall on the head coach at Indiana. And if you go back to the history of Indiana football, I think the last coach to leave with a winning record was either Bo McMillan or John Pont, and that was a long time ago. So for me, I want a coach who's been a head coach, who knows how to be a CEO of the program, who embraces the NIL and portal era. Now, you don't have to love it or say, "Oh, I'm pro." Like, just know how to use it and know how to work it and things like that. Also, I need to see a commitment to facilities, a commitment to assistant coaching pools. And we go back all the time, a commitment to actually building the program and giving the next coach the tools that he'll need to build the program, whether that's scheduling, um, facilities, new press box, new indoor building, all that stuff, marketing the program, bringing game day atmosphere to Bloomington. Look, I was at Purdue yesterday, and I was blown away that they had 50 some odd thousand people at that game. It was a battle of 3-8 teams going nowhere under a first year head coach with Ryan Walters. All these people who say, "Oh, it's Thanksgiving break." Well, the Purdue students were there. And as annoying as that stupid train whistle is, they create atmosphere with it. They have a tradition, the shout tradition in between the third and fourth quarter. So this is a program overhaul. This is just not a coaching staff overhaul. It needs to be a program overhaul. And I want a head coach who comes in and says, "This is what I need, and I'm going to take this job if you know. I'm only taking this job if you do this, this, and this." And it doesn't have to be in year one. It could be in year 2, 3, 4. But announce that, hey, we have a plan in place. We have a vision for Indiana football. Otherwise, it's going to be the same old, same old. You're going to have you have the reputation of being a graveyard for coaches, and your athletic department needs to change that. Why can't IU be successful at football is the big question that the athletic department needs to answer and figure out answers to. So it's more than just a head coach, and we'll get into that. But I want a head coach who's an offensive guy who knows how to run a program as a whole and is given enough money to go get coordinators. Because we saw what Tom Allen did with two good coordinators. You saw in 2019 and 2020 under DeBoer and Kane Womack what the offense and defense did. So that's the role. Go structure your football program to be successful.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's probably a more attractive job now than it has been, honestly. I think we were talking a little bit over the past couple of days about where the floor of Indiana football is now, and should the next guy that comes in here be a floor raiser or a ceiling pusher. And to me, I think Tom Allen has raised the floor of Indiana football. I think he's shown you can bring in talented transfer classes. He's shown you can bring in top 30 high school classes, um, with a schedule next year that has 8 home games. You lose the divisions, more money than ever, more eyes on TV than ever. I honestly do think it's more attractive to most than some people will think. And now the challenge is you have to get it right. And we haven't seen a ton of instances so far of being able to do that with the current administration, but it only takes one hire really to fix it and get it right.
It
Indiana,
also takes one hire to blow it up, and we've seen that too.
well, I mean, I think at that point we're comfortable there, so I don't think we need one hire to keep us down there. But
So, Alex, we got a comment in the comment section from Devin saying Tom Allen needed to go. He's buying season tickets for next year, whoever it is. Though I'm super excited now, and um,
yeah,
that
we
that was
talked
that
about
was
this. Yeah,
part yeah, that was part of the reason to do it, is that you could not go through another year of what we've been calling zombie football, and you'd go through with 20,000, the same 20,000 fans who've been in the stands, and you're starting to lose those people, and things like that. So you have an opportunity here to create excitement for Indiana football. It does not guarantee anything, does not guarantee success, it does not guarantee failure. You have an opportunity at a crossroads here to change the trajectory of Indiana football, and we'll see where they go. But that's a good point for Devin. I'm excited now. I'm in. We're getting season tickets and all that stuff.
yeah, you had to do it, and we talked about that. The 20 million or whatever, Indiana can afford that money. And for people that are gonna say, "Oh my gosh, $20 million for football," blah blah blah. I'm not even talking about the basketball people. The athletic department money is separate. This is separate money that they get separately from donors or their other funds. So this is not like this is pulling away from upgrades to the library. And even if it was, who gives a shit? Just, I want to win, and we want to win. But yeah,
But
Devin, you're right, Devin. Had to be done. We talked about 20 million, the cost of doing that now, or deferred payments or whatever, versus
well,
heading in.
technically it was 25 million,
Good for
but
Tom. Good
yeah,
for
it's interesting here. We don't know the details. There was no official announcement as of yet from the IU athletic department in terms of a press release. They did not have a press conference yet. It was just announced that he will not return in 2024. So I don't know if there's some accounting going on where, hey, that buyout drops at December 1st on Friday. We'll make the official announcements. Um, but we did have a university source confirm that he will not return in 2024. And who knows if they negotiated that buyout down even more and stuff like that. So that'll be interesting to see when it comes out. So people, freaking out over 25 or $20 million. We'll see what the official number is. And look, Tom Allen is a really good defensive coach. He turned a terrible defense in 2016 around, was the reason they went to the Foster Farms Bowl. So he will get another job if he wants one somewhere. So that 20 million, it's not like they're writing a giant check. Here's $20 million. Don't spend it all in one place. It's in installments, and now you're starting to get deposits for season tickets and all that stuff. We'll see what the final number is, but it's sometimes you have to spend money to make money and win.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to. That's the only constant in the history of college athletics. And like most things in life, you get what you pay for, right? And say whatever you want, but unfortunately, that's how it works. So, yeah, it's a pivotal couple weeks now. I think you'd be crazy not to think they've probably put feelers out for guys already and had conversations with guys. That's normally how this works. Um, I'm just catching up on stuff, but last night, like Dave Doran, who's a really good coach at NC State, who makes over $5 million a year, is asking for 5,000 fans to donate $1,000 each so they can recruit, retain, and develop their roster. So that was in Tom's closing press conference yesterday, which I felt bad listening to. Whether he knew he was done or not, we don't know. We don't know if he was given the news before the game or prior. But it's a huge 2 weeks because you essentially have to re-recruit your roster now, which is what Alan talked about. You're going to see a ton of guys go into the portal before bowl games. But yeah, all of that, our current roster aside, there's, I think, pieces you can build around, but you can't, no ill will if any of those guys leave, obviously, with the coaching changes or just in general. But it's a very important time. And I think that's why you had to do it now rather than wait if the buyout dropped another 5 million or whatever. You gotta let a guy get in here as soon as possible and either bring guys from his school, find new coaches, hit the portal, try to keep guys on our roster now. It's way too early for that, I think. And there's too many guys that will be available and all that good stuff. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Alex, I want to get back to some comments in our feed here. Will Fessler asked about have we seen Dylan Powell's tweets? We talked about those a little bit to recap. Yeah, we agree. This is an opportunity for Indiana to change the course of football. And it's not just the head coach. It's can they get all the other stuff in place, a pool for assistants, facility upgrades, stadium upgrades. And look, I might be biased. IU needs a new press box. And I know it might just be hey for me, but I also think that just the look of the stadium and things like that go a long way. But yeah, it's not just a head coach, a head coaching job and switch. We've seen, to quote all the IU football fans, we've seen that movie before. We've seen the coaching change. We've seen that. And guess what? It always ends the same way. It ends up with the guy, either being relieved of his duties or for whatever other. Unfortunately, in Coach Hep's case, he passed away. But it always ends the same way, and it's never a guy leaving on his own. On his own. So it's a big opportunity for Indiana to get this right. And then another question from Devin, I think, is
quick one. I did ask Dylan if he wants to join this, so we'll see if he gets back to us. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, and then another question from Devin. I think this is the $1 million question or the $20 million question. Alex, who do we want? He really likes Chuck Martin over at Miami of Ohio. But who's, if you were making this decision, who's your choice?
If right now I had to pick, again, I'm going for a guy that you've had to have been a head coach to me. You just have had to have done it. I don't hate Chuck Martin. He's familiar with the state, which I think all of that's overrated anyway, but he's been in a big program in Notre Dame. He's had pretty good success at Miami, Ohio, which is a tough job. If you can consistently win at one of those kind of bottom half MAC schools, I think you're a pretty good coach, and he's been able to do that. So he was on the hot seat a few years ago, has seemed to turn it around. But the MAC is tough because honestly, like 2 or 3 players that you hit on, you can kind of change the whole dynamic of the conference. So it's not necessarily an indication of how good you are at building a roster, but I think that he would be underwhelming if Chuck Martin is the guy after you pay the 3rd highest buyout in the history of college football. I think that's pretty Indiana, honestly. I think you start with Willie Fritz at Tulane. I think he would be my absolute top candidate. He's stacking success at this point. He would recruit the South well. He's got kind of a system. You can tell they know what they want and they know what they want to get. Obviously, Michael Pratt, their quarterback's a really good player, but he's kind of now that he's established himself at Tulane the last 2 years, he's done really well there. Beat the crap out of USC in the Cotton Bowl, but they gave him a lot of time, and they've been patient. And the last 2 years, they're 12-2 and 11-1. So, um, you know, I think he would be one. Jamie Chadwell at Liberty, I think, might be higher on my list maybe than Fritz. Honestly, was at Coastal Carolina and then now at Liberty. He left Coastal after having a really good run of success there as kind of the mid-major darling for a few years at Coastal, and then this year at Liberty he's 12-0. So last 3 years or 4 years going back to his time at Coastal, he was 11-1, 11-2, 9-3, and then 12-0 this year at Liberty. So that's a really good run of success. He's a offensive minded guy. Again, I think you'd have a system and an identity pretty quickly. And I think he's the kind of guy that punching up a weight class, moving up into a bigger conference, I think he's the kind of guy that can sell transfers and recruits on this is my system. My system works. You're going to make me even better at my system. And I think he could be a guy that could flip the roster over pretty quickly. A bunch of other guys, I think the two I do want to spend some time talking about, Sammy, and I think ones that a lot of people are going to be surprised that are on our hot board are Pat Fitzgerald, longtime Northwestern coach, and then Paul Chryst, longtime Wisconsin coach. Obviously, both had decent success. Chryst was really successful at Wisconsin for a stretch there. Fitzgerald kind of up and down, and then, the forced resigning or firing, whatever. But I think I could talk myself into Paul Chryst. I do not think I could talk myself into Pat Fitzgerald.
Yeah, to go back to the other guys too, you got to realize that there are going to be other bigger Power Five jobs opening. Like Florida is probably going to open next year, and if you're Jamie Chadwell, Liberty's a pretty good job. You're really going to go, and this goes back to the overall question: can you get the resources to be successful at Indiana? From the athletic department and fans and all that stuff. Why take the Indiana job if you figure Florida is going to open up next year and you're going to be, a candidate there and things like that? There are going to be, we've seen it, jobs open all the time at bigger things. I think Jamie Jordan brought up two other names we didn't have on our hot board, but who've had success. Jed Fish at Arizona. Again, Arizona's like IU, basketball first, football second, and he's turned that program around. Jake Dickert over at Washington State, they nearly knocked off Washington yesterday. Uh, they're a program in limbo. They're without a conference and stuff like that. Um,
I think Fish played quarterback at Arizona.
yeah.
He was quarterback
So
coach for the Patriots for a while. Yeah, they've been good this year. I
yeah,
don't
we
know.
had we had
Realistic.
Justin we have Justin Fry on our hot board too. IU guy. First of all, the biggest qualifier for him, in my opinion, is that he was an OG Hoosier Huddle reader. That's top of the list, must have on your resume. But he's an IU guy. I've heard he wants the IU job and things like that. And but he does not have head coaching experience, and you would need to have a big assistant coach pool and maybe get a coordinator who has been a head coach, who knows how to do the basically the head coaching duties and all that stuff. I would not be upset with Justin Fry, but there are a lot of other things that need to happen for him to be successful too. But going back to Paul Chryst and Pat Fitzgerald, those are two names that have started to circulate and things like that. But man, I'll preface this by saying this: Indiana does not need to win the press conference. They need to win football games.
Yep.
Paul Chryst will not win you a press conference unless it's like the most boring press conference ever contest. He's won football games. He's won in the Big Ten. Yeah, it was in the Big Ten West. There's a good article on why he was let go at Wisconsin on The Athletic from last year. I will share it. I'll share it. It is subscription based and all that stuff, and I'm pretty sure I hit my limit on sharing my free subscription with people. But it goes into he was overly loyal, and he's the offense was basically never evolved. It's almost like it would be Tom Allen 2.0, just in a gray crew neck sweatshirt. But if he could hire an offensive coordinator, he has been down at Texas as a quality control assistant with Steve Sarkisian. Maybe he's learned something. Maybe he's ready to evolve, embrace the NIL, embrace the transfer portal, and modernize the offense, because you cannot run a smash mouth offense at IU like you did at Wisconsin unless you're pulling in those 4 or 5 star offensive linemen, which he started not to do. Um, his last final years. There's also a story they had a 4 star linebacker on campus for recruiting, and they just didn't have a recruiting department. And the guy, nobody ever talked to him on his visit and all that stuff. And he ends up in Michigan. And the rest is history. But Pat Fitzgerald, I, I'm shocked that he's even in the conversation, given that how his career at Northwestern ended. Not only was it unsuccessful outside of the 2020 season, he had back to back, what was it, 2 and 1 win seasons. And then with all the off field hazing stuff, I don't know if IU is going to touch that with the 20-foot pole. However, how awesome would it be to be the team that Pat Fitzgerald leads in the Big Ten for Big Ten Revenge Tour? That would be awesome. He Northwestern is a very, very difficult job to win with. But I think there's a lot of the off season off the field things and questions, and it would just be a circus because it's still an ongoing lawsuit with Northwestern, and he really hasn't addressed the media since then. So is it going to be focused on IU? He also hasn't embraced NIL, but Northwestern has some transfer rules that IU doesn't, and things like that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. 2021, 2022, he went 3-9 and 1-11. I just I don't know. That 2019 year, I think IU beat him like 42-0 or something.
It's 37-3.
Yeah, he's never been anywhere besides Northwestern. It's hard for me to see him being a guy that the fan base would get excited about after, again, you just paid the third largest buyout in the history of college football. You're not going to hire Pat Fitzgerald. You can't hire Pat Fitzgerald. I think even like Justin Fry would be, if Justin Fry is your floor of this search, I think that's okay. If he's the guy everyone says no and you go back to him, I think that's okay. You could get excited about him building from both lines, him knowing the program, him knowing the conference, knowing what it takes to win. But yeah, like to your point, Sammy, you're going to have to really surround him with guys that have done this before. Otherwise, it could go downhill pretty quickly. But
well, and that goes for any coach that IU brings in. You're going to have to increase the pool of money for assistants. Even if you had hired whatever Nick Saban, it's never going to happen. But one of the greatest, you're still going to have good assistant coaches. So we'll see. Let's see. Does anybody in the chat have more questions? How about Tyson Helton at Western Kentucky? He's put together some excellent offenses down there. Has nearly beaten IU a couple of times in the last couple of years. But that's the type of offense you're probably going to need to win at IU. Something that's difficult to prepare for and makes people practice for it.
Yeah, I could get around, or I could get, again, it has to be something like that. You need a guy that has a clear identity, has been a head coach and has had success being a head coach at those places. Since he's been a head coach at Western Kentucky, the only time he's been a head coach, he's 39-26, 28-11 in conference. 9-4, 5-7, 9-5, 9-5, 7-5. That's a guy, again, I think he's got the all-time passing leader in the NCAA for his season. I think you could show a guy, this is my system. I know with better coaches and better recruits, I can make this work. I think that's the kind of thing that you have to look for, a guy that says, I know what my identity is and I know this will work at a bigger school, not I've been at a bigger school, so this will work. I want, do you have an identity that has worked that will work at a bigger school? Not, oh, I've been at a bigger school, so I know how it works. No, you don't. It's different now than it was even 3 years ago for Paul Chryst and Pat Fitzgerald. Again, I think he won 3 games his last 2 years. Who knows if he was even on the hot seat at Northwestern because he's, the golden child there, but they did force him out pretty quickly. And then the interim with the roster that went 1-11 last year went 7-5 this year. So how good of a job was Pat Fitzgerald really doing? Um, yeah, Health and I like Tom Herman, Jamie. Yeah, I think you could warm up to a guy like Tom Herman. I think for most schools, you would say he was successful. For Texas, they would say he was not successful. He's kind of fallen on a little bit of hard times at Florida Atlantic after getting off to kind of a hot start there. Yeah, 4-8 this year after taking a break, but he was 32-18 at Texas, 22-13 in the league. In 4 years as their head coach, went 7-6, 10-4, 8-5, 7-3, and he won 4 bowl games in 4 years. So Herman's a guy. He was before that. He was at Houston, so they poached him in state. But he was 13-1 and 9-3 at Houston before Texas poached him. Yeah, I think you could get behind a guy like Herman. What I do like as well about Herman is he's kind of fiery. So I want a guy that's kind of gonna snap and tell you how it is and say no, that sucked, or no, that's not okay, or we played like shit and stuff like I want that. You need a guy that's gonna call people out for not coming to games and do that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think to Luke and Jamie, I think both those guys are okay. But back to my initial point, I think it's easy to say, oh, you want to keep a lot of this roster. Well, you won three
Roster's
you won
done
three
nothing.
conference games. So I'm sure Macaulay will get a million offers to leave. Lucas will probably leave. Like, you got to get the right guy. The right guy will find his next whoever. And the good teams seem to produce players like that all the time. So it's got to be the scheme and the guy and the program over the individual players. As we've seen, there's talent on this team. The guys have played well, especially in the back half of the season. But I'm not hitching my wagon to any of the guys on this current roster that the new coach has to keep or bend over backwards to get the stay at Indiana. I don't see that happening. And you had a huge turnover with the roster last year anyway. So that's not how it works with a coaching change. I'm not hitching my wagon to building the offense around anybody really. The new guy is going to bring in who he wants. So, yeah, I don't know. Sammy, I was thinking about it though, like that kind of a question. If you had to keep, besides non-graduating guys or guys maybe that are a senior and will use an extra year, if you were able to kind of like franchise tag 5 guys from the current roster for the new coach, regardless of scheme or whatever, to keep, who would your 5 be? And I have mine in mind already. I was thinking about it on my drive yesterday.
Yeah. Sorsby is probably the number one guy. I think he figured something out at quarterback, and we've seen that has been the issue for IU over the last couple of years. Inconsistency at quarterback, injuries and stuff like that. He's proven to be a warrior. He's made some throws, and it'd be nice to see what they can do with Sorsby with a full spring as him as QB1, a full fall camp with him as QB1, because the development from game 1 against Ohio State, where they didn't throw the ball, to the last 3 games, yeah, the competition's different, but they had more confidence in him. He was making good throws. I know he threw 3 picks. He would be guy number 1. Number 2, probably EJ Williams. I think he has another year left. He's already would be a grad transfer, wouldn't he? I think he has another year left. He's a big body receiver. I thought he came on real well late in the season. Number three is Philip Bleedy. He's your best defensive lineman. He was your best defensive lineman all year, and you need to build that unit. Number four, Jalen Lucas. Yeah, I don't think he had a good year. I don't know if it was a confidence issue. He just he just never hit that second gear. You finally saw it yesterday in that 100-yard touchdown return, which whatever, it's 98 yards. He fielded it at two, but you take it. Um, Jalen Lucas is guy number four. And then um, I, I don't know. One of the defensive backs who's Kobe Minor, something like that. Um, there's not a lot of guys. It's hard to find five guys that I would say we absolutely need to keep.
Yeah,
The Donovan, I mean Donovan McCulley is another one.
yeah. I went kind of younger with mine, so mine would be Sorsby. I thought Carter Smith actually had a pretty solid season at left tackle for redshirting last year, playing minimal games last year, and then starting full time this year in the Big Ten. I thought he had a good year at left tackle. So I do Sorsby and Smith. Offense continued. I would do um, McCulley. I think I would pick him maybe even over Lucas, honestly, which sounds crazy, but I think that's kind of where I would go. Defense, Jordan Shaw for me was a guy that showed a lot of potential, and I would love to kind of keep him and keep building with him. Um, and then I was between kind of either Lucas um, or um, or like Marcus Burris. I thought actually had a good year, but yeah, you probably go Lucas there. So four on offense, and then Jordan Shaw, who I like. Um, but yeah, I don't know. So that was kind of an interesting one I thought about. But Sammy, I think next year you have 8 home games. So this, especially with the portal opening on December 1st, if you get a guy in here,
December 4th.
4th, sorry. Um, if you get a guy in here, he's probably the candidates you're going to talk to already have their staffs in mind, right? So if they got a head coaching job, they know who they're calling or trying to bring. So all that stuff, enough at least to make a move with coordinators and all that stuff would probably happen quickly. From there, you have to meet with the current roster, see who's staying, who's going. If a guy like Sorsby or whatever doesn't fit your scheme, you probably have that conversation. But um, you have 8 home games next year. Divisions are gone. You've paid, for now at least, you've paid $20 million to make this kind of a move. It seems like it's decently attractive. No,
The job.
the
I
job.
mean, look, you're in the Big Ten for now. You're getting Big Ten money, and if IU is going to spend like a Big Ten program, yeah, the job's attractive, and you have some pieces. I don't think this was an untalented IU team. This was not the 2021 team that just got um that just got decimated by injuries, and you're going, well, yeah, Donovan McCulley playing quarterback, and who was it? Grant Gremmel starting, the bucket game that year and stuff like that. Yeah, I think it's an attractive job, but you need Indiana to say, hey, this is what we're doing, and this is we're having a vision, and we're joined by TJ, who has been working on this hot board for a while. TJ, welcome to the show. Quickly, what was your response to today's news, and then take us through your hot board.
Response to Tom Allen being let go would be um, a bit of melancholy. I wish that it would have worked out. Um, I think that it's fair to acknowledge that Tom Allen, in my opinion, did not fail as a hire. Um, when you look historically at what Indiana football coaches have done, Tom Allen, while again, my opinion, not the best. I think Bill Mallory would get the nod there. Um, Better than average for Tom Allen. Now that's equal parts an indictment of what Indiana football has been historically, and also a credit to Tom Allen for I think a few very good seasons. Um, so a bit of melancholy that it did not work out because I was rooting for him just as a person. I wanted to see Tom Allen succeed. And I think that he is a guy that outside of results on the field represents a lot of what you would like as your head coach at Indiana. Um, However, I think that it's also very fair to go back to the entire point of Tom Allen's job at the end of, when we're evaluating everything is to win football games. Um, that can be considered fair or not fair, that other things like graduating players, being a good representative of the university, uh, those things are important, but they are ultimately secondary to winning football games. That's the primary reason that Tom Allen was hired, was to win. Um, and over the past 3 seasons, that clearly did not happen enough. And it became clear, started to become clear last season, and for me, really clarified itself um, during the Akron game when Indiana was very fortunate to beat a program that has historically been one of the worst in the country, did not have any expectations to perform well this season, and ultimately did go 2-10. Uh, and IU was fortunate to beat them. Um, so you started to think, well, this this might go real sideways here, um, and then it did. Uh, Over the past 4 games, you knew that IU had to run the table to get to a bowl game, and that it kind of felt like that was the only thing that was going to be enough to save Tom Allen's job, was winning out to get to 6-6. In the past 3 weeks, they have done everything possible to make sure that they lose. Finding ways to lose is kind of a common theme that we've had over these past few weeks. It's been defensive collapses, uh, costly mistakes by the offense, costly mistakes by special teams, um, leads being blown in the fourth quarter, just all the telltale signs of a program that's not particularly well coached. Um, so when you find out, early this morning that, um, hey, Tom Allen is been let go by Indiana, not at all surprising. Which is why, for the past several months, we've been working on a coaching hot board. That our hope with this is to kind of put down the candidates that we feel would be of interest to Indiana and would also have some interest in the IU job. So guys that could be hired. We're not going to put Kirby Smart #1 on IU's hot board. Uh, that's not a realistic candidate. So hopefully the guys that we've listed on our hot board are uh, more or less realistic candidates. This is not the list that we would say, oh, these are our, if we were making the hires 1, 2, and 3, it's the guys that we think will be candidates for this Indiana job. So kind of separated them out into categories. The sort of most likely finalists, and then a couple that are sort of wild card candidates, and then a couple that we put on there. If I use going to make like a major commitment to Indiana football and go out and try to hire somebody for $8-9 million a season, that brings a different pool of candidates into the equation. So we listed a couple of those candidates away as well. Guys like Dave Clawson at Wake Forest, Jamie Chadwell at Liberty, possibly a Willie Fritz at Tulane. Coaches that, on the face of it, would be terrific hires. Probably not the most likely of scenarios. So we'll start at the top with our most likely candidates. And I just jumping on here, so I don't know if you guys have discussed any of these, but I'll just kind of read the names and we can go from there. Justin Fry, who is at Ohio State, former Indiana player. He has coached with Ohio State with Ryan Day and with Chip Kelly at UCLA. He's a name that would definitely be interested in stepping up to a head coaching position. Obviously, the biggest knock, excuse me, biggest knock with him, he does not have head coaching experience. So that is something that we believe is important to Indiana in this search, is to find an experienced head coach that knows how to run a program. Justin Fry has been around those guys, but he has not been that guy. Second, and again, these are not in order. It's just kind of in a category. Sean Lewis, currently at Colorado, former head coach at Kent State. Chuck Martin, current head coach at Miami of Ohio. Kurt Signetti, head coach at James Madison, who certainly appears like Syracuse is going hard after him, which makes a lot of sense for them. John Summerall, current head coach at Troy, former Kentucky player, so it's not a little bit of a geographical tie-in there. He's got some experience in the vicinity of Indiana. And then Pat Fitzgerald, former Northwestern head coach, and Paul Christ, former head coach at Wisconsin. So that, if you would have a quote finalists, those are ones that I think are most likely to be the primary candidates for this job.
A lot of care about Jason Candle at Toledo. I have reservations about him that I think yours will be the same, TJ, but a lot of people asking why not hire the guy that has a good record at a smaller school. What's the answer to that?
Yep. So to get an answer to that question, and this is my opinion, I think that comes down to looking at the resources that Toledo has in comparison to their MAC counterparts. Toledo, historically and currently, that is the I don't know about best program, but that is the program with the most resources, the most talent, the best recruiting in that conference is Toledo. And that's kind of the case regardless of who the coach is. So with Jason Candle, the record looks really good, but how much is that due to him and how much is that due to where he's coaching?
Yeah.
And I think that is sort of the primary consideration for why I personally would not pursue him as a candidate. He does have head coaching experience. He has won games. It would not be the worst idea in the world, but I think that those are the red flags that kind of make it much less obvious than it would appear to be.
Yep, I agree. So I think that's kind of our thoughts why we have maybe hesitations about him. I think you didn't really see a Michigan State or a Syracuse. It seems like Syracuse at this point is going to go with either Signetti at James Madison or at Holy Cross, excuse me, or
No,
Dan,
Signetti's James Madison.
whoever the Holy Cross guy is. Then that's the guy that they're apparently talking to.
Bob Chesney.
Yeah. So yep.
Holy Cross. Yeah.
Yeah. So Syracuse apparently is talking to both him and Dan Mullen, who obviously was at Florida, Mississippi State, and then ESPN now. That's an interesting one, I think, for IU. I think we kind of heard rumblings, true or not, last year that he was kind of interested in the Indiana job. So maybe that's one that will circulate or you'll have to talk about. But yeah, I think you hit on kind of what we already talked about, TJ. It's got to be a guy that has been a head coach before. I think if Fry is kind of the floor of your search, I think that's probably a pretty good search. But I think you need a guy that's proven he has a real identity that things can work at Indiana.
Yeah, I think Justin Fry, you would definitely feel more comfortable making that move if Justin Fry had been a head coach at Kent State or a head coach at um, somewhere in Ohio, let's say Miami of Ohio. Um, it, that that is the biggest red flag for him, and it is a big one because having head coaching experience does not guarantee that you know what you're doing. Um, but it does allow for an evaluation by Scott Dolson to know, okay, I know that Justin Fry is capable of running an organization, which is that's what a football program is
Yep.
at the level that you have to compete in the FBS or in the Big Ten. Um, I think it's not necessarily about, oh, he's been a head coach for 4 seasons and this was his record. That that matters. Again, bottom line is winning games. So that matters, but in a case of like a Jason Candle, that record I tend to think of it like wins above replacement level. Um, in an advanced metric that you see in a lot of different sports, but like, is Jason Candle just an average coach accomplishing exactly what an average coach would accomplish at Toledo?
Yep.
Like,
And Houston just came open too. Dana Holgorsen just got fired. So
okay,
that's another job that IU is competing against.
That's probably on a more of a similar level.
Yep. So I want to get to the question. I think it's Big Daddy Hoosier, or Daddy Hoosier, asked, and we talked about a lot with you with Alex, but not with you, TJ. What else needs to happen for IU football to be successful? Because just a head coaching change hasn't worked in the past.
sure.
We talk about the assistant pool, we talk about facilities and investment, and what that looks like, and scheduling and all that stuff. What else needs to happen from the athletic department, the AD, the president, to make Indiana football successful?
Okay. So I'm gonna play the hits here. It's going to be number one is NIL. And these may or may not be in exact order of importance, but NIL is now critical. If you cannot be competitive in that space, you're going to have a really hard time recruiting. And if you have a hard time attracting talent, good luck winning games. It's not impossible to consistently win while having significantly less talent than your opposition. It's not impossible, but almost. Um, so Indiana's really needs to find a way to have competitive NIL budget in the Big Ten. Um, I think the second bullet point there is going to be your overall coaching salary pool. Um, Whoever IU hires, that head coach needs to know I can build the staff that I want. It it cannot be, well, okay, you've got um, X amount of money to work with, and that head coach candidate comes back and says, well, I know I won't be able to get this candidate for my offensive coordinator. I know I won't be able to get this guy for my recruiting coordinator. And I know I won't be able to get this guy for special teams coach, whatever, um, with that budget. So I'll have to go to my third option for that job. That's going to put that coaching staff into a hole right away. So it's got to be a competitive staff budget that provides that new head coach with exactly what it is that he needs to fill out the staff the way he wants to. Um, the third thing is going to be the facilities. A lot gets made about having a football only weight room. Um, I don't know how much it matters, but um, it is a problem.
Here's
It's a problem that IU cannot show recruits their current practice facility.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's a big deal.
The
That's
football
bad.
only facility, I'd rather, if it's going to take $1 million to just put up a divider, I'd rather that $1 million go into NIL.
Sure.
That's just me. I think it's better spent there. But yeah, the indoor facility is not even on the website. Like it's not even listed under facilities on the website. It
They
needs to
know it's
be.
embarrassing.
Yes, they know it. They know it needs to be redone. How much money they're willing to pour into it, we'll see. But right now, like you said, NIL is the name of the game, and we just had a fundraising drive with Hoosiers Connect and Hoosiers for Good. That was a $1 million match. They hit $500,000 in a day. That got matched to $1 million. That campaign's continuing through the end of the year. So if you're looking to donate, if you're inspired now with the coaching change, donate to NIL. Hoosiers Connect, Hoosiers for Good is a good place to do it. But yeah, it's an NIL game. That's what it is. And the next coach, I think, you don't have to praise NIL or what you just have to know how to do it and use it and fundraise and things like that. The department is spending a lot of money to get rid of it, Tom Allen. You can't half-ass it and say, hey, we're going to go cheap the rest of the way, because then what was the point of firing Tom Allen?
Yeah, let me chime in with the question here on facilities. Sammy, do you believe that there is that there has been or have been funds given to upgrade facilities that maybe will become to fruition? There is a rumor that was done but would not move forward with Tom Allen as head coach. Do you, without knowing specifics, but do you think that there is validity to Indiana football is going to have an upgrade of some sort in facilities that will be coming with the new coach?
I mean, I'll put it simply. I'll believe it when I see it. That's just, we've always heard this about Indiana football. Oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and it usually hasn't come to fruition. But yeah, I've heard those rumors too, which is unfortunate, because what would Tom Allen be able to do if he had those resources? If you had an indoor facility, if you had a coaching pool where you could go and replace good coordinators with great coordinators and stuff like that. Um, but that ship has sailed. I will believe it when I see it. When they announce a plan, when Scott Dolson finally talks in public about the football program, which he has not done since August of 2022, when he comes out, and there's no press conference scheduled today, none. There hasn't even been a release from the university. I will believe it when I see it, and hopefully they have a press conference. I'll take a PTO day and get down there and ask those questions that need to be asked about facilities and all that stuff. But yeah, TJ, to answer your question in a sentence, I'll believe it when I see it.
I agree with all of that, but the
Yeah.
only thing I would say is that the indoor facility is not why you played conservatively against Penn State or tried to kick a field goal yesterday and any of that
Sure.
stuff. But yeah, it's important for sure. I do have another candidate quickly, TJ, before I want to ask you a question. Sammy and I talked about, what do we think about Brad Stevens?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
he would be a good football GM, and he could pay
GM.
dividends.
GM. Now, the issue that we run into with Brad Stevens, he is a masshole now.
Yeah.
That much discussed term. Don't know how that would play. But hey, the dream is still out there. I don't think IU football should hire him just so that, our basketball program will always have kind of the golden unicorn to dream about.
Yeah.
I think we should keep that alive so as not to kill hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one I could see.
Let's kind of go into these realistic candidates just a little bit. So Justin Fry, Sean Lewis, and I'm scrolling through this here. Pat Fitzgerald, Paul Christ. Current, want something they all have in common, not current head coaches. But, three of those guys have been head coaches previously. Sean Lewis left Kent State voluntarily to work for Colorado. By all accounts, that will be a 1-year stop in Boulder.
Yeah.
Don't know where he's going to go. He'll either be a head coach somewhere else or he'll be an offensive coordinator somewhere else. Hasn't been the rosiest of relationships with Coach Prime, it would appear. Despite early season success for that offense, he was stripped of play calling duties, and the offense has gotten worse. That's probably a combination of their diminishing depth as well as defenses getting a look at Shedeur Sanders and a different play caller that has not done as well as Sean Lewis did. Had success at Kent State, which is something that rarely occurs. I think that the two biggest things for Sean Lewis going in his favor would be attractive brand of football, lots of points, probably questionable defense. So perhaps a throwback to Kevin Wilson here, without some of the other off-field issues, maybe. And then he won at Kent State, which is, I think a check mark in his favor because that's a program where he had to do it with less resources than his opponents most Saturdays, which obviously apt comparison for Indiana. So Sean Lewis is there, Paul Christ, former Wisconsin head coach, and then Pat Fitzgerald, former Northwestern head coach. Both of them not head coaches this season. Pat Fitzgerald for the scandal before the year that broke, and then Paul Christ has been a special assistant to Steve Sarkisian at Texas. So let's go to Sammy and Alex thoughts on, and we'll start with Paul Christ.
Yeah, I think between him and Fitzgerald, I think he's the one I could warm up to a little bit more. I don't know. You and I have talked about it, but he definitely got a good dose of reality of what the portal and NIL and all that stuff is like at Texas. He's seen that firsthand, I'm sure, with the Arch Manning visits and all that stuff, with what it takes to get players like that. Um, really, really successful at Wisconsin, but Sammy and I talked about it at the beginning. I mean, he was let go for essentially not embracing the current state of college football, not embracing modern recruiting, um, and literally got let go mid-season during a solid season after a solid run of success. So, is he a guy after you pay 20 odd $1 million to fire Allen? Is he a guy that gets people excited? I don't know. I think 6-6 under Paul Christ is probably a very real, consistent possibility, which I think is exciting. I think you'd see a competent team that could tackle, which would be a departure from yesterday. But is that sexy? I don't know. I think it's a lot like a Bielema to Illinois hire. I think it's a guy that you would say is going to build from both lines first, is going to recruit the Midwest, knows the Big Ten. I don't know. I don't think you need to do that as much anymore, but I don't know. I think out of that group of four, I would pick Lewis. Kent State has been playing football since 1920. He was the only guy to win a bowl game there. They've been to four, and he's the only guy to do it. So, yeah, to your point, though, I think offense would be good. I think you'd have a system that would be fun to watch. The challenge for him would be, the Colorado thing seems like a zoo. You already have guys resigning today, but are you going to come in and stabilize the program and have any semblance of momentum? Because it seemed like a weird stop this year and probably didn't go as he planned.
Yeah. Well, on Chris, you're not going to win the press conference, which shouldn't be the goal for Indiana. It's to win football games. Also, that's a candidate who you might want to hire a football GM for, who runs NIL, who looks at recruiting, and things like that. And that also costs money. We haven't talked about this yet either. What's going to happen to Aaron Wellman? Are they going to take a look at the strength staff as well? It's something that has, when David Ballou and Dr. Ray left for Alabama, it's something that really hasn't gotten back up to that level. And it's been a hard ask to replace those guys because they're probably the best two strength coaches in the country. Yeah. Pat Fitzgerald, I'd be shocked if IU touches him with a 20-foot pole. He has been a name that's been floating around, but with all the off-season stuff and coming out of the whole Kevin Wilson, we need to not be mean to people and stuff like that. Do you really? You're going right back to the Kevin Wilson era in terms of personality, on the field, off the field, hazing stuff. I just don't think IU sticks their head in that mud. Sean Lewis probably wants, like you said, TJ wants to get out of Colorado. It's been a mess. He was removed from play calling duties. He's a guy, like Alex said, he's won the only bowl game at Kent State. There's a lot of good options. We'll see what happens. I do believe this will move quickly as the portal opens on December 4th. I believe, now that Allen is gone, that IU players could start entering their name into the portal immediately. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. But, anytime you fire a guy, have the guy resign, you need to have a pocket list, and hopefully that's what IU has, and we'll see. But it can't just be the head coach. It needs to be an investment all around the program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think whoever you are going to hire, there needs to be a meeting, an interview, whatever you're going to call it, with that head coach, where you need to get an honest answer from that candidate. Here, give us a list of things that you need to make this job work, to make this program successful. What are those things? Give us your plan, and what do you need to accomplish that plan? Now, that sounds like very basic. Well, of course you need to do that. Yes. The second step is to get him those things. That's the second step. You have to hire the person that you believe has the plan. to make it work, hire the person that you believe is capable of executing that plan, and then give him the resources that he needs to execute his plan. That includes the funding, that includes NIL stuff, that includes facilities, that includes his staff, that includes the schedule. Um, I mean, there is absolutely zero reason, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, no need to go over it again. There's zero reason for IU to schedule anything other than 3 as close as you can get to guaranteed wins in the non-conference. And then you keep begging the Big Ten for, a 4th non-conference game, which is not going to happen, but still, you keep begging. That has to occur. And if you don't allow a coach to execute his plan, it doesn't really matter who they hire. So I'm excited to see how this plays out. I do think, what is it, December 5th, the portal opens in general?
Yeah.
4th?
The 4th.
Yep. So you've got to have everything in place before then.
Yep.
End of the week, yeah.
Yeah. By the end of the week.
It'll happen quick. And TJ, we have about 5 minutes here, but want to get some final thoughts from everybody. But you figure this moves quick, Sammy. Like, it's got to be. We're going to start probably hearing things next week. Early.
I would think you'd start hearing things tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's whatever. When's December 4th? It's coming because December 1st is on Friday. I think they have a guy by the end of the week. That's just my, maybe by Friday. I don't know the basketball schedule. I know they play today. I know they play on Friday. So maybe there's a midweek hiring and stuff like that. But Scott Dolson needs to address the press, and there needs to be questions asked and hard questions asked and stuff like that. So we'll see. But Alex, I do want to give you a programming update on Dylan Powell. He is traveling home from the holidays today, but he is open to joining us later in the week. So we will try and get him on a podcast later in the week to discuss it. He has been very vocal on social media about his support for Tom Allen, and then the lack of support coming from, the department and the school towards the football program and Tom Allen. So it should be an interesting conversation with the former Hoosier offensive lineman Dylan Powell. There have been players already on social media with whatever looking eyes, decisions, tweeting, and guys who, could be building blocks for the future. But let's get the final thoughts and wrap it up. Thanks everybody for joining in all the comments.
Yeah, I'll start. I think I'll summarize my thoughts, and then I'll go with who I want and who I think. So I think that would be a good format. Open the show with it. Sad day, but a day I think we knew was coming, and a day that had to come. Love Tom, and I think he had the most wins since Mallory for an IU coach. But you can't get an extension and then go 3-24 in conference play. And I understand he's a great guy, and we all felt really good after the 2020 season, and we gave him an extension, and you were feeling good about adding resources and stuff like that. But you can't win 3 conference games in 3 years and expect me to be okay with it. I don't care where we are historically. His job is to win games, and we didn't do that. And you can blame whoever you want and any factor you want, but you're the head coach, and that's how it goes. So it's a business. I think the last couple of days, it seems like from what we've heard, we're starting to treat it more like that. But Scott has to get it right. And a lot of athletic directors don't get to make 3 football hires. Right. And so he's got to get this right. So I guess for candidates who I want, I think my top candidate would probably be Jamie Chadwell at Liberty. I don't know how realistic that is. He has pretty good resources right now. I'm sure he's looking ahead to next year like all guys are, but there's going to be carousel movement every year. So it's hard to predict what will open, and there's always openings that you aren't anticipating.
Yeah.
Who I think it will be, probably Fry, which I think is okay. I think if Scott comes out with the vision and says, we're going to give him a bunch of money to hire coordinators that have been head coaches and all that stuff, again, I think I could excite myself to that hire. The only guys I don't think I could get myself excited for at this point would be Chris Fitzgerald and Candle. Probably Chuck Martin, but I don't know. I hoping we take a big swing and you get a guy that other schools want, but there's going to be more openings in the coming days, probably even today. So I'm sure they've already been talking to guys and have had feelers put out there, but Scott's got to get it right. And with 8 home games next year and the portal and NIL, we've seen other schools flip their roster pretty quickly. So it's definitely doable. But TJ, go to you here.
I Paul Chryst is not necessarily exciting, but I think Paul Chryst is
and
a
exciting should
logical,
never be in the same sentence.
right. I think, and that matters, but I do think Paul Chryst is a logical hire. Um, I I think that you could, if you were attempting to put yourself into the shoes of Scott Dolson, I think you could relatively easily get to, a decision where you look and say, Paul Chryst is the guy I'm going to hire to improve the program. Do I think that Paul Chryst would improve Indiana football given proper resources? Yes, I do. I think that Paul Chryst would have Indiana as a consistent bowl team. Um, is that what you're shooting for? I mean, if you're hiring Paul Chryst to, have Indiana winning 8 or 9 games a year, that's very likely not going to happen. I think a pessimistic person would say, well, yeah, that's not going to happen with whoever you hire here. That's probably true. Um, so I think Paul Chryst is safe and logical. Um, and I do think that is ultimately who they end up hiring. Now, I am a person that enjoys watching a team run the ball like 30 times a game. I like that. Um, so that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to me. Uh, again, I can understand why it would be a letdown or something that would not necessarily get people to, calling into the ticket office to reserve their season tickets. I get it. But I do think that Paul Chryst would be a hire that makes sense and would ultimately work pretty well. Um, the person that I personally would select, Chadwell's great. I don't think that's an option. I do think that South Carolina opens after this next season. Um, they went 5-7. Shane Beamer is losing Spencer Rattler, and they really don't have anything else. So their schedule's hard next year. I don't see it improving for them. So that job's going to open, and Chadwell, coached at Coastal Carolina in the state. So I think he's probably going to go there. I think Willie Fritz could be gettable. You could, with Big Ten money, if you said, "Hey, we're going to invest," you could more than double what he's making at Tulane.
Yep.
And dude's won everywhere he's been.
Yep.
Sam Houston State, Georgia Southern, and Tulane, which was a complete dumpster.
Yeah.
Before Willie Fritz went there. And he knows how to build a program, and he does it with an offense that is a little bit unique. I mean, look, it's hard to say any offense is totally different nowadays, but I think Willie Fritz would be fantastic. He's a little bit on the older side, but I mean, he doesn't have one foot in the grave here. Okay, that's the biggest comment that I've seen as a knock against him is, oh yeah, he's in his 60s. Well, okay, he's winning. He continues to win. He wins everywhere he goes. If you follow what he tells you he needs, you're going to win. Like that would
Yep.
be great. I think it's going to be Chris. And if that's what it ultimately comes to, I would say, hey, what's your plan to make that work? And then I'd be excited for it. So we'll see. I agree with you. I think IU is aware they need to have things in place quickly.
Yeah.
To give the new coach a chance to build his staff and build his roster. And on the site side of it, buckle up. We're gonna be busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are going to be busy. So keep coming back to HoosierHuddle.com. Follow us on Twitter at Hoosier_Huddle. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us some likes there. You can subscribe to our podcast anywhere you listen to our podcast. We'll have a bunch coming out here in the next month or so. And then, finally, my final thoughts on it. Yeah, I would take Willie Fritz in a heartbeat. But yeah, it needs to be. You need to supplement it with support from the athletic department as well. And it's not just here's the key to the car, but you have to go buy the steering wheel, the spare tire, the gas. Oh yeah, and it needs an oil change. And you gotta fix the windshield and stuff like that. So we'll see. It's been a crazy 24 hours, and we'll see where it goes. But it's stick with us. We'll have all your stuff updated. Alex, close us out.
Yeah, Tulane, new AD as of 5 days ago. So if you want to swoop in there while they're getting the house in order, I think that's a really good option. I think Chadwell and Fritz, I talked about at the top, are probably the guys I want the most. I'll talk myself into anybody. Who am I kidding at this point? So I know I will. I think, except for Pat Fitzgerald, I think regardless of the off the field stuff, a guy that was 1-11 last year at Northwestern, and then his interim coach went 7-5. I just can't get behind Pat Fitzgerald, who's been nowhere besides Northwestern. I don't know. Again, it had to happen. We've talked about I think it's her either third or fourth year, but the university president, Pam Whitten, part of what made her attractive, I think, to a lot of people was that she said she understood the importance of football. And it's time. It's not getting any easier. It never does. But with where things are heading now, you have to be confident, and it has to be now. So Scott has to get it right. I hope he does get it right. He's made a lot of good decisions. He's made a lot of bad decisions, most, just like everyone else in life. But you are hired and you're in this position to hire the right football coach. And if you're the athletic director at a Big Ten university, you have to make the right hire for your football coach. And
Yep.
It's time. He will be redeemed and rewarded forever if he does it properly. And if he doesn't in 4 years, when the guy he hires is on the hot seat again, the next guy will have to sell you on a vision to maybe a new athletic director. But it'll be crazy. Well, you'll see lots of rumors floating around. We'll give you the good stuff and the correct stuff. So keep coming back to us. But lots more to come on the site. So please keep coming back.
Yeah, one final thing.
Are you saying don't believe every coaching rumor on X?
Yeah, no, Mark Stoops is actually in College Station right now. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Freeze up my afternoon, I guess.
Yep. One final thing. I do want to thank Coach Allen. He's led us into the program with a handful of one-on-one interviews. He's been a joy to cover. A good person. I've taken a lot of lessons from him and his LEO stuff and taken it to my personal life and to my professional life. So thank him for that. But it was time for change. And we'll be back talking about it whenever a hire is made. And we'll try and get Dylan Powell on next week as well. So thanks for joining us. And we'll be back. Keep checking HoosierHuddle.com. We have the hot board up, a look back at the Tom Allen era. And then, of course, the news that broke this morning that Tom Allen will not be returning as head coach of Indiana football in 2024. We'll have all the updates from the transfer portal, recruiting as well. Ethan Roberts is starting to reach out to recruits and getting comments from them on this. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday and keep it here.